Film Club.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Film Club. I'm one of your hosts, Andy Harrison, and with me, as always, it's Andy Donaldson.
Ciao again.
Every week in Film Club, we invite you along to watch a film with us, and this week, we are taking a look at And the Ship Sails On.
El La Nave, if I've pronounced that correctly.
Nailed it.
By Federico Fellini. And this is 1983, and it's a film about a voyage to commemorate the loss, to mourn an opera singer who is the best of her time. But it reminds me of Murder on the Orient Express, but without the murder.
It's a group of interesting characters sort of trapped in a place together.
Yeah.
And then you're getting these little story vignettes, as Federico Fellini would do. You know, a lot of his work sort of has these story vignettes. I think here, the story vignettes are a little bit more tightly woven together. Federico Fellini, I haven't seen one of his films for a couple of years, to be honest. I actually caught 8.5 at a theatrical screening a couple of years ago. 8.5 quickly became one of my favourite films, and for some reason I just never got around to watching the rest of Fellini's catalogue. And this is the first time I've ever seen And the Ship Sails On. I was so excited for it, but also a little bit worried. Fellini's style is so like offbeat. It's like you can kind of see the influences of what would go on to influence people like Wes Anderson. But whereas they would
saw so much Wes Anderson in this. So much.
And you can sort of see how they would like dial it up to 11 and create this very on-point, distinguished, quirky world. But what Fellini does that a lot of those directors later on would sort of drop is a little bit of like the pomp, a little bit of the circumstance, a little bit of like the intellectualizing, a little bit of the political humph that goes with everything.
When it came to the first 10, 20 minutes of this film, I was not buying in. All you hear is the film reel going off, and there's no dialogue, there's no music and everything. You have the incredible shift in colour when the colour, as he goes up the steps and the colour comes in. And then you start, people like, you know, the opera comes about and start singing. And then, you know, I was thinking, all right, okay, still not buying into it. As the film progressed, yeah, I bought more into it. I'd like to say that, okay, this isn't, I was trying to think how I would phrase this. It's not a bad film. I enjoyed the film, but it's a film I would never want to see again. I kept in my head thinking, you know, Christ, that their production design is superb. Their costume design is superb. You know, it's something like I last saw something that good in like Barry Lyndon. It's also shot very much like a theatre production. And I was thinking, those scenes with the ship, are they filmed? Are they the actual boat? They can't have filmed this on a boat. It can't be that big a set. And it turns out it was a set. It turns out that set was moving on this incredible platform. And, you know, there was some shots that like kind of gave it away with the enemy battleship. And you know what? When it came to the end there, and I was like, it constantly breaks the fourth wall, this film, but it kind of like showed you how they did it. And I was like, you know what? Fucking superb. And a lot of that is down to Dante Ferretti. And he is the production designer on this set. And he's worked with Scorsese. I mean, he did The Aviator. Have you ever seen, if anyone's ever seen The Aviator, you know how good that film is, and costume design as well.
The fact that it's presented a little bit like a stage play, or more particularly, it's meant to be a little bit operatic. Given that all those characters are entrenched in opera, it kind of makes sense to perform this final rite, this story. It makes sense the whole thing is theatrical. And I really appreciate the sort of the marrying of those two themes there. And that absolutely gives way to the incredible operatic soundtrack that flows throughout this entire film. The music is so wonderful because, one, it's, you know, classic Baroque opera, but like, two, it's half integrated in a diegetic way and a non-diegetic way. Obviously, you get the actual soundtrack itself, but their performances and the actors who are obviously trained opera singers as well are incredible.
Originally composed by Giuseppe Verdi, the Italian opera singer, opera composer, should I say. One of my favourite classical tracks of all time by a guy called Claude Debussy. It's Clair de Lune, and we heard that at the end of Ocean's 11 outside the fountain. What great scene when they're in the engine room and the guys are saying, oh, please, come with a voice, and they're all trying to outdo each other. Yeah. And I was that's the point right there, maybe just a bit before, when I was fully into this film, and I was thinking, you know what, that's class, that's awesome. I love every bit about this because it's like that marriage of class and it's about that class coming together and through their love of music and their love of like kind of culture and, you know, theatre. And, you know, another great scene when they're all dancing on deck, that rope is let down when their love for theatre performance and everything comes through and they come together.
It is the binding element, even the fact that they are brought together on that ship to remember a friend who is, in all of their stories, sort of defined by her performances. You know, that is the glue that brings them all together. And those two scenes are absolutely fantastic. I particularly love all the dick measuring that goes on. who can sort of wail the loudest or the highest pitch or whatever. Special mention here to the scene where he sings a chicken to sleep. Like using a certain tone, so it sort of hypnotizes a chicken into falling asleep, and it works on Orlando as well.
Yeah,
such a stupid little scene.
But it's those like kind of moments of you know, those moments of daftness that help make this film. You know, it doesn't take itself seriously, but at the same time, the underlying subject is it does.
For me, the film is sort of at its best when it has those charming moments of trying to catch a seagull that's got into the building. Sorry, it's got into the ship. It's the charming dance sequence between all like the rope coming down, or it's a stupid like rhino that's lovesick and it's smelling, or like the fact that he gets away with the rhino at the end on the little boat and he's like, hey, rhino milk is awesome. It's all those little like vignettes of ideas and humor and personality and charm and character, and then occasionally it throws in this like curveball where there's this like plotting going on with the blind princess who gets her lover arrested, and I think it's in those moments where like the story falters just a little bit.
My issue with this film is that I struggle with subtitles. I think it works in this because if there weren't subtitles and it was in English, you know, unfortunately I don't know Italian. If it was in English, I would not be able to cope with that lip sync because the lip sync was pretty bad. And the fact it came out in 1983, I struggled with, like, some of it felt underpolished. And I think, you know, given the times, you know, 1983, and the budget that the Fellini may have had, I just feel that it was, like I said, it was almost like it should have been filmed. I expect this to come out in 1963 or 53. And I was really surprised to see it quite an older age film. You know, that kind of the lack of attention to certain parts of audio was a big factor of that. And also the characters, there was one character I particularly liked, and that was obviously the narrator himself. Everyone else I wasn't asked about at all. I think it's when you get the light-hearted characters, like there's the other scene where they're doing the seance. He comes in dressed as and he's like, oh, you know, it's like, I did not understand it at all, but I was laughing my head off.
He's like genuinely offended that they've found out that it's him, and then he goes down with the ship literally later on, just like playing the reel of her back.
I mean, there's something like quite, you know, it's solemn about that, like the fact he loved it, that he's willing to, you know, give up his life, but it's done in such a kind of black humour fashion that, you know, it is funny. There's
certain moments in the film where I really appreciate the sort of, I guess, the intellectual challenging of it. It's one thing that Federico Fellini was always very, very good at, was that he would never ever talk down to his audience, and he would certainly challenge you to sort of think outside of your comfort zone. And I'm sure that somebody a little bit more familiar with Baroque stylings and a little bit more familiar with Italian political climate at this time, and maybe even political climates, you know, pre-World War I for Italy, I'm sure someone more educated in that would have a much deeper and more fleshed out experience and appreciation for this film. For me, I really like that it challenges me to think about that. But ultimately, the stuff that I enjoy from this film it's the color, it's the personality, it's the ideas, it's the charming wit and the sense of irony going on. So there's And the Ship Sails On. You can let us know what you thought of the film down in the comments below, or you can hit us up on Twitter, as always. But Andy and I are going to be back once again next week, where we're going to take a look at the adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Nice little trip back to my childhood here.
So until then, get watching.